You're listening to the Adventurous Weirdos podcast by WatcherDM. Learn more at WatcherDM.com or come join our Patreon at patreon.com/WatcherDM. Stay weird. Hey, Austin.
Hey, Gabe.
How you doing, man?
I'm all right today.
Did I ever tell you I prefer Gabriel?
No.
Yeah, my name is Gabriel.
Okay.
It's okay.
Should we start over?
No, just, no, I like that, you know.
Yeah, all right.
I'm surprised that it never came up, but I guess it wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I prefer Gabriel.
All right, Gabriel.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Gabriel.
I'm Austin.
And we're WatcherDM and Quest Giver Games Limited. And this is the 5th episode of the Adventurous Weirdos podcast. So if this is not your first time here, welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. You must be a subscriber or
just a cool person.
Or a family member. Somebody who we're paying to watch this. Just kidding. We're not paying anyone to watch this. But yeah, thanks for coming back. And if you are new to this is an opportunity for Austin and I to talk about what it's like being a Titterpig publisher. If you don't know what Titterpigs are, you're probably on the wrong podcast.
Let's not go that far.
I mean,
we're inventing new nomenclature to talk about tabletop RPGs. They're called Titterpigs now because we're cool kids and we need to speak the cool kid language. Yeah?
Yeah, too cool to answer.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, so it's just assumed correct.
I screwed it up.
SMFH. Noob.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, this is our episode 5. I missed you last week.
Mm-hmm.
You had Thanksgiving duties with family,
yeah.
and you had to take your baby and show it around, which is the most important part of having a baby.
Show off the infant.
Yeah.
People like that.
Yeah,
I assume. I like it.
Yeah. No, it's great watching them all croon over.
No, it was great. I got to ferry out on the Salish Sea. I got to see the black sand beaches and the orcas and the ravens and the such. It was nice.
Get a little inspiration.
Well, always being out in the big wild around here is always very inspiring. But
yeah, I don't get out too often. Even just a little walk to the creek, I always get some sparks of inspiration and joy out of it. I always am coming home with ideas.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were even talking about just the other day about you were talking about the black sand, and we were like, man, we should
do some island stuff.
Do some more island stuff. Do some more hex crawl stuff.
I have a lot of thoughts on that. I kind of have a feeling that anybody who's ever tried to write rules for water vehicle combat in Titterpigs probably has no sailing experience. I've never once seen rules for water vehicles in a tabletop RPG and been like, this person knows what they're fucking talking about. Like,
I was actually reading Empire of Imagination last night. And it was the interaction where Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax first met.
Mm-hmm.
And they met over Dave Arneson was playing a Napoleonic simulation game, and he had this big ship model, and like they were using I can't remember the guy's name, but the rules were basically that you like guessed how far the opponent was, and then you measured, and based on how far off your guess was kind of like that was like how much you missed by or whatever.
That's really cool.
It was kind of a neat concept.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, first of all, that sounds like something designed by somebody who probably has tried to do anything on a boat.
Yeah.
Because you're guessing.
Yeah.
Like try holding a sextant still on a boat long enough to, right? Like.
This is a stupid story, but I remember when I was about 13 or 12 years old, I was learning to sail, and I had learned Dead Reckoning, like to do it like they did in the 1700s and 1800s, where you have your compass and you're setting off a mountain, or you're kind of navigating like that. And we were learning. There's a bunch of kids on this boat for a week, and I think 2 days into the week, the guy who ran the boat had finally saved up enough money to get a GPS, so they didn't have to do Dead Reckoning anymore. And I remember trying to race my classmate to see if I could navigate better than him with his computer. Me and my fucking, abacus and my compass. You can't. It turns out you can't. Even if you think you're really, really smart, You're not smart than a
Actually,
computer.
thinking you're really, really smart is probably a better way of being like not.
Lost.
Yeah,
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 yeah. The smarter you think you are, the worse you're gonna be, probably.
yeah.
But that's the nice thing about being what did you say last week? A mediocre white guy, and you're 13, and you
I think yeah, the
yeah
the power is embracing your mediocrity. If everybody
yeah
could just embrace their mediocrity,
yeah.
it's a better world.
That's the thing. You don't need to beat the computer. You just need to
Except
do
you've
it.
been defeated and be
Yeah
like, well, I'm a meatbag.
yeah. You
This is
know.
how meatbags do.
Was it John Henry was a steel driving man? Is that well, whatever. Someday I'll write my
Magnum opus.
weird maximalist sailing RPG where you roll for wind direction every 20 minutes, and you
Yeah.
can only
What?
land on certain beaches.
Yeah, actually, I think that's an interesting topic to bring up. So, like, um, playing a lot of OSR lately,
Yeah, yeah.
it's been a weird amalgam
Hmm.
of what seems to me like minimalist, an attempt to have a minimalist play style in what is effectively a maximalist design space.
Interesting.
Like Dungeons and Dragons is not minimalist. It tries pretty hard to simulate warfare, at least,
Hmm.
um, and apparently some level of economy, because that was the first things that were in Dungeons and Dragons was like,
Yeah.
here's how to kill things, and here's how much it costs to buy weapons.
Yeah, here's how to kill things, take their money, and turn it into better killing tools.
Right, right,
Capitalism.
exactly.
Uh,
But like there's other games out there that we've played. Hell, there's other games out there that we've made
mhm.
that are more minimalist
Yeah.
and deliver, I think, potentially a tighter game loop.
Yeah.
Like I think that's what's interesting about it is like at a certain level, like I was playing 5e the other day, and part of the game loop of 5e was like rolling skills to see about doing things
Hmm.
that did not matter
Yeah.
to the anything
Yeah.
really. Um,
That's fair. I feel like that's the most common experience in DMing 5e is like when you ask, they're like, I wanna open the box, and you're like, okay, it's a strength check, and they fail, and you're like, I guess roll again. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it's just, I guess I called for a stupid skill check, didn't I? My bad. Like,
Well, I think the question is like, do they need to have the thing in the box?
yeah, do they need to have it, or is there a consequence for failure? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it realistic that you and your four dudes are gonna try and open this box for 10 minutes, not succeed, and then be like, well, I guess this box is unopenable.
Well, and I think that like you just hit the nail on the head, right? It's like if you have infinite time and nobody cares, and
Yeah,
the noise you make is irrelevant,
yeah,
then no roll is required.
yeah,
You eventually destroy the box through your incompetence, at least.
yeah.
Um, and maybe it's contents. Maybe that's the consequence, right? It's it was a glass slipper, and now it's 15 shards of glass slipper. Um, but yeah, like we were just talking about, how the maximalist tradition of role playing games, like where's the end point? So I feel like a lot of the modern gaming stuff is bucking against the trend of 5e to be this kind of completionist
Yeah.
maximalist games, but it's not the biggest, most complicated
No,
game on the block, not by a long shot.
I remember when it came out in 2014, 10 years ago, maybe. I remember when 5e came out, reading it or skimming it and thinking, they really dumbed it down. Like, this is too simple. This is like the beginner box for third edition. And now I feel like I'm like, God damn it, do I really want to roll up a character for 5e? I gotta pick skills, I gotta pick feats, I got 6 ability scores. Like,
Yeah.
get out of here. Um,
6 ability scores. I only need
yeah,
4.
ain't nobody got time for that. Come on. Uh, you compare it to something like Lamentations, or OSE. Even OSE kind of does the same thing for me, where it's like, oh, like the amount of experience you're getting is going to be altered by your prime attribute. I'm just like, nah, no, I don't have time for that. You lost me at the percentage mark. Like, I got stuff to do.
Yeah, doing math as a part of the game loop is a very weird nerdy thing to do.
Well, OSC is just, it's very cumbersome in a lot of ways compared to like even fifth edition is just like the difference between skill systems in OSC third edition, something like Pathfinder, and then 5e just looks so simple by comparison, right? Which I think brought a lot of people in.
I don't know. Does OSC doesn't really have a skill system?
Oh, sure, it does. It has the thief skills. It has the percentile. You're a level 3
That's
thief.
the
You have a
thief.
40%
That's like the
climb.
thief class feature.
Yeah,
Like nobody else gets those.
yeah. Which is weird too, because it kind of implies that if you are a fighter or something and you want to climb a rope, I mean, what are you know?
Yeah, no, you suck.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
everybody sucks at climbing except the thief,
yeah,
and that's like, you know, I think that's about a certain amount of trying to live up to the fantasy, and like, how much do you let everybody be the fantasy guy? What's Batman's class?
yeah. Well,
Right. The obviously
I think
Batman's
we
class is
rogue,
okay. So good answer, but also
monk,
wrong.
paladin,
Right. Like there's
ranger.
every single fucking person has an opinion about this. And if
Yeah.
you really want to get technical, he is barely a wizard. Right.
Oh
He's
God,
just leveraged
let's
the
not.
the magic of economy to do whatever the fuck he wants. His magic is technology.
Yeah, yeah, it could be artificer. I mean, you'll recall when our friend Andrew Ferguson was running his dragon campaign.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember you playing Batman. It
Yeah,
was fantastic.
thank you. I had a great time. I was actually thinking about that last night.
It was Rogue Monk, right? You played.
I think Rogue and Monk was the build I went with, and I think I had like a single level of Paladin or something, or
Okay.
Fighter or something.
Yeah.
Like it was just like I needed a fighting style or something to, I don't know.
Brawler.
But it's one of those things where it really did, building that character was real exercise in abusing the multi-class rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And I think that's a good example though, like of like a character where you did the dipping,
mhm.
right? You tried to paint a an existing IP character
Using the
in the colors
tools,
of 5e,
yeah,
and you ended up with some Frankenstein monster. It was okay. It was a fun character.
yeah. I mean, the point was to go back and forth between Adam West and Christian Bale, and kind of, So I think as long as you're calling people chum as Bruce Wayne and then being the Knight when you're Batman, I think it doesn't really matter what class you pick. But
Exactly. It
yeah,
depends on the game you're playing, right?
yeah,
Which
yeah, yeah.
but like doing the same thing, if you were to build out Batman in Pathfinder, for instance, I feel like you would have a more accurate Batman to whichever Batman you wanted to have, right? I mean, you'd have to pick. Oh, you'd pick like, is it Keaton? You couldn't do West and Bale. You know what I'm saying? Like, you couldn't have them both.
Yeah,
You'd have to pick one and kind of be like, this is the Batman I'm getting. But you could probably get it, really down there. But you would end up with 12 class. You know what I'm saying? Like 12
yeah,
classes
yeah,
or subclasses or some mix of skills and whatnot just to get that right. And the same is true of like any fictional IP character. You look,
yeah.
comic book characters. You look at Wolverine. Any of those comic book characters.
Well, I think one of my favorite characters I've ever played was a comic book analog. Was Deuce Danner, our incredible bulk.
Right,
Uh,
right.
which, I mean, that was one of the times fifth edition really played out for me, because that guy was a straight barbarian, and then I took as my, beast path or whatever, where you can mutate into a thing,
Yeah,
and then just taking the healer feat to kind of get a little bit of scientist in there. I felt worked pretty well.
it worked pretty well.
That healer feat is a nice. I feel like it's a nice um, option. It kind of adds a lot of flavor to any character. Um, but I feel like there is a temptation to be like, I'm a cleric, I should take the healer feat. It's like, don't do that. Like, that's not for you. Like,
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I've definitely had clerics with the healer feat because,
yeah,
like, if you're the party healer, like, and you run out of like, if you run
level
out of
one,
slots,
yeah,
it's nice to have around. But yeah, you're right. When you've got other options, it's not usually the one you want to be breaking out. Um, it's interesting. So, what feats do you ban at the table? Which ones are you like, nah?
for fifth,
Yeah,
yeah, I tend to run fifth that if it's in the player's handbook, it's allowed. Or if you can use the mechanics in the player's handbook for whatever you want to do. Like I remember Chelsea wanted to play a mouse folk, and so we were just like, mouse folk are halflings. Was a really really great fix for that. And just kind of like letting people say, if whatever you want mechanically, if it's in the player's handbook, go nuts. Which, sometimes you do run into the, like I'm a polearm master with Sentinel, and I have an AC of 27,
Yeah.
and it's
Or I'm a diviner with the lucky feet. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, for fifth edition, nobody's gonna die anyways. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit, make your broken character if you
Yeah.
really want to.
Yeah.
It's
That's fair.
I feel, there are games where like if you show up to the table with two 18s, you're gonna get a hairy eyebrow out of me. Like, but I think as far as fifth edition goes, a little bit of power gaming is all part and parcel.
Yeah, that's part. Yeah, it's the fantasy they're
Yeah.
kind of delivering on anyway.
What about you? What do you? I mean, I feel like when I've played your fifth edition games, we've mostly been playing online, where you have the D&D Beyond avalanche of player options.
I do have the legendary package of D&D Beyond stuff.
But what do you ban at the table? Like,
Nothing. I
yeah,
ban absolutely nothing. I don't. I yeah. I think unlike some DMs, and I don't. I only know a few DMs who are even like this, and I think their games are good. So qualify both of those things. Unlike some DMs who are there to try and tell a story, I try to be a DM who is there to be a world for my players to have whatever they want in. And sometimes it's a story, and sometimes it's a exaggerated,
a little bit
out
of
of
a
control. Yeah, it's
farce.
a bit of a farce. Um, and sometimes it's a crime. Sometimes it's a genocide.
Yeah.
And I try not to really judge, and I try and let them have as much fun as they can have with the rules that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the only times where I've like had to curb player behaviors is with summon animal.
Yeah.
Summon animals at one where you can get 8 monsters on the board that you're controlling, and when your turn suddenly takes 8 times longer to
Than everybody
execute,
else's.
it is brutal. And it's not brutal for the DM. I don't care. Like, yes, you're just gonna
Yeah.
kill this thing faster. But for the rest of the people at the table,
Sitting with their fistful of D6s ready to cast
right,
fireball.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I think that's the one time where I've kind of just called it out and said, hey, let's why don't we mitigate this? I'll let you roll once, and then we'll average the damage across everybody. Then do something to kind of
Yeah.
kick it along, make it a little bit faster. I think that's one of the rules that probably could use, or one of the things that could use rules in fifth edition that doesn't really cover is when you summon a bunch of shit. Um, but yeah, I don't, I like it when people bring new weird stuff
Little
and are like,
homebrew.
yeah,
Yeah.
bring the homebrew.
See,
I've
that
I've
drives
definitely
me
had
a little crazy.
I've had people show up at game with homebrew that did not get reviewed, and it was
Yeah.
from something that got added to somebody's thing somewhere along the line. And even in those cases, I think I've been like, okay, let me read this thing. Wow, that's broken itself. Fine, we'll use it. Go ahead, whatever. Like, I kind of don't care. Um, but next time, like, take it out so we don't use it again. And then
Yeah.
next time, run things by me. It never happens. Doesn't matter. I don't really care. Um, though I think the last like long campaign that I ran that had any kind of constraints to it that weren't really my own
Mm-hmm.
was Humblewood.
Okay.
And the Humblewood campaign setting has like its own races. It doesn't really have its own classes per se. There's like some subclass things that kind of are in there that I think some people took. And it's got its own spells that are powerful compared to regular fifth edition spells. So those got used all the time, which was great because we were playing Humblewood, so it felt like we were in this world where this was the magic, and that
Mm-hmm.
was like that actually I thought worked really well to the storytelling parts of Humblewood.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I got to get back on it. I'm waiting for my Humblewood Tales Kickstarter to get delivered so I can get my my Humblewood game back off the ground. I'm looking at you, hit point press.
Let's see
Give me
it.
my junk. Give me my plastic junk.
There you go.
I'm also waiting for my Dolmen wood and I've got Bridgetown. Bridgetown's on its way.
Nice.
Troika.
Yeah, there's a bunch of good Troika stuff coming out.
So
Longshot
much.
City. I wanna.
That's not Troika.
Well, it's not Troika, but it's Melsonian. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I think
Gonna be
it's.
a superhero dice game.
Yeah, I don't know
Should
if
be
I
fun.
just outed myself by talking about my Batman build and my Bruce Banner ripoff, but I actually kind of like superhero stories. I'm a
No, I think
little.
they're fun.
I got a bit of a problem, maybe.
Hey, look, we all
Yeah,
survived the last 20 years of Marvel.
of
Like,
Marvel movies.
yeah,
I'm really excited
I'm,
for the next one.
I don't think I'm really excited for anything these days, but that's just me being old.
No, yeah.
Like, I'll watch it and I'll be like, oh, this was good. You know.
I remember walking out of Endgame with a friend of mine, and he was saying, he was telling me that the first one came out just kind of, he was like about to enter high school or something, and he's like, and now I'm like an adult, and like it's over, and I'm ready to move on. And I was just like, heathen, like, don't you dare abandon me in this movie theater. We're gonna watch these till we die.
That's
Um,
funny.
yeah,
Well, you were talking about mouse folk halflings,
yeah.
which is an example of skinning player options,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
which I think is something that, first of all, doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
so helpful. Like it's just like it adds so much to fiction. I feel like, or,
yeah, I think that's totally true. Although I wonder if, like, I feel like as a DM,
Mhm.
it's great.
Yeah.
It's a tool to offer that like gets you there as a DM.
Hmm.
I wonder if from the player side, it feels less gratifying.
It can be tricky to feel like you have permission. You know what I mean? Like,
That's
uh,
fair.
but it is one of the interesting things. Like when you talk to people who are kind of new, or like they haven't read the book. Which honestly, a lot of people haven't sat down and read the book. Like
Why would anybody read the book in
in
2023?
2023.
You could just search for the things you need.
It's an oral tradition, anyways, when you get right down to it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like if you talk to people who haven't read the book and you're like, what do you want to play? They're always like, it's, either they're talking about the fictional characters that they like that they want, I want to play Aragon.
Yeah.
I want to play, I want
I'll
to,
play One Piece.
yeah, I want to play One Piece. I want to be like a blue mage from Final Fantasy. I want to,
Right.
and when people have kind of played a little bit, I feel like it's very easy to get sucked into like, what do you want to play? Oh, I want to play a cleric next. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
is just like, the takes a lot of the bite out. I feel like so. I always try and encourage people to come up with a concept and then you know look at the pieces and see how close you can get to that using the kit.
Yeah.
Um, because I do feel like something is really really lost when you're like, my guy's a barbarian, and that's when you end up in the kind of thing where it's like, oh, I'm a barbarian and I have the Outlander background, which just to talk about power gaming, like just about like the basics of building a character. If you take the Outlander background as a barbarian, you are screwing yourself. Like, the choice of skills you get is the exact, you know what I mean? Like, you're not getting anything out of Outlander that you weren't getting out of Barbarian. And it's so much more fun to me, I think, to be like, oh, I'm a barbarian, and my background is I am a nobleman. I'm a really angry, spoiled little boy, and I throw tantrums, and that's my character. You know what I mean? Like that's way better, I think. Or to be like I'm a wizard, but I'm like my tribe's wizard. I'm an outlander wizard. I live on
Right.
the frozen tundra, and I do whatever I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Um, but I feel like that's one of the nice things about 5e is you can take those contrasting options to build sort of more interesting characters. But at the same time, there's kind of like, I don't know, like a weird pressure almost not to do that. Like it's like you say, like if you're playing a cleric, right? You're playing a healer, you want to take the healer feat. So when you run out of cleric healing, you've got more healing so you can fulfill your healer role, right? which is just it's a very gamist way to look at it, and you're like, I gotta be the heel, right? Gotta
Yeah.
bring the heel, and I think it's just more interesting to be like, yeah, like, my guy was a soldier. I took the soldier background, and I was a wagon driver for the army until I witnessed blah blah blah, and I turned to God, and that's why I'm a cleric. So I have
Thrun
these,
was the
yeah,
soldier became priest.
yeah,
Yeah.
and developed interestingly too, right? Because that character had that whole kind of like you were involved with dragons, you were serving a dragon.
Yeah.
Um,
Became a dragon knight or a head of a dragon knighthood.
yeah, got transformed into a bird person wizard for a little while
Yeah.
there.
That was pretty fun.
Hid your identity from my player character. Uh,
We've had
still,
some weird times.
yeah. I think
Good
Alhazrad
times,
still
man.
doesn't realize that both Thrunes were one Thrune. He was just like, boy, Thrune is a really popular name for these Dragon Knight characters. But
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
you were talking about skinning.
Yeah, so skinning. So obviously player skinning is one side of that token, but then the other side of that is monster skinning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things you've said to me repeatedly that I feel needs to be said to the world is goblins
Are wood elves.
are wood elves.
Goblins are wood elves. Yeah, I mean,
Which is weird because wood elves don't have stat block in the dungeon
they
in the
don't.
monster manual.
There's a bit of an implication that if you want a stat block to represent one of the player races, you should take guard or knight or thug and
Right.
apply the racial, whatever to it, which is bland and stupid. It's a terrible way to do wood elves. It makes them feel no different than humans.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Um, and it's likely like wood elves make a great enemy, especially for low level parties, because tromping around in the forest, you can kind of do things like, oh well, if you harass the birds, if you pull up the root, or if you take the special rock, then you make the wood elves mad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I think that goblin stat block, you've got that nimble escape feature that lets you hide or disengage as a bonus action. Perfect for wood elves. They've got the short blow damage. All you have to do is you change the language to Elven. You maybe bump up, intelligence and wisdom,
Charisma.
charisma. Yeah, get them out of the, satisfy your fantasy racism a little bit and make them pretty and special. And
Satisfy your fantasy racism.
yeah,
It's gonna be a bumper sticker
I
somewhere.
just want goblins to smell bad and have bad wisdom saves. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. No, I think goblins are just leaky.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they just urinate
sure.
constantly. Like they have no bladder control.
Yeah,
That's what makes them goblins.
interesting.
Like they were people before
There were people
of
before
other
they had
races, but they've just been
this
shunned
terrible
because they're
medical.
bedwetters.
There we go.
And all bedwetters become goblins in fantasy Gabeland.
We were mad at Morkborg last week. This week it's bedwetters. You're on notice.
I will always be mad at Morkborg.
Yeah, you called them Finnish last time.
Are they not Finnish?
No, they're Swedish. That's
Are you
like,
sure?
I'm very sure they're Swedish. Yeah, those are fighting words. I
We'll
think
see.
we'll see. Prove it. Fight Russia.
Come at me, Morkborg.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean,
Cool game, bro.
cool game, bro. Nice typeface.
Exactly. Nice 50 million
we were
typefaces
we
you
were
can
really
choose from.
pulling our punches on Morkboard in episode 1. Now we're here on episode 5, just letting those Norwegian bastards have it. I get to say that I'm Norwegian.
Are you?
I arguably. I mean, I'm Canadian. Just,
Let's stick there.
let's
Yeah,
stick
stick
with
with that.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Land back. Uh, yeah. I
What
mean,
other good, like easy monster skins
yeah.
are obvious and there? So I actually did like a little short the other day that was
Mm-hmm.
about throwing together like if you didn't have time to prep or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
and the thing that came out of it was like an air elemental in like a house fire. So you had smoke
Cool.
mephits and an air elemental,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I was like, man, like actually it's not even like a monster. It's almost like you're representing a force of nature
Okay,
using the monster stat block of an air elemental.
that's interesting.
It's like if you're fighting this fire, you're fighting the air coming into the fire, the air that's feeding the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And you just do some, breaking floors and ceilings and, some fire damage, like constant area of effect fire damage. and deal with the air elemental to stop the fire. And I was like, kind of a
That's very cool.
cool way to think about it. I think like elementals fit into that really nicely, where you can be like, oh, okay, your boat is being thrashed around
Mm-hmm.
by the waves.
Yeah.
It's two water elementals slam attacking your boat,
Yeah.
or you. Like,
That's interesting.
so those were some things I had thought.
I do really like using like air elementals in particular as like a spirit power thing, or if
Mm-hmm.
it's like, like this guy exhales an air elemental on you, or like this guy's gonna like, somehow generate, like, I think there's a bit in Long Bear Valley where there's a ghost, the ghost of an electromancer, and her spirit. We don't use the ghost stat block. We use two copper dragons that speak in unison and kind of form this like swirling magnetic thing. They've
Yeah,
got the repulsion breath and the electricity damage and what have you.
yeah, that's a really cool reskin.
Stuff like that works well. I noticed you called them shambling mounds last time, but the trolls at the end of
That's right, the trolls.
Wake Up Sheeple, where it's like having those just be like you were saying, like, when you're describing a monster to someone, you're like, oh yeah, it's big and green and warty and has dreadlocks, and they're like, kill it with fire, it's a troll.
Yeah.
It's You can kind of get around that by being like, yeah, the lichen stands up and it's a plant monster now, and you're like, oh, what is this like? And it's growing back. Okay, well, I know what to do with things that grow back. Like,
Burn it.
yeah, right. I changing those little skin things is so satisfying to me. And you were also talking about combat as exploration.
Yeah,
I feel like that's all part of it, to make things new and fresh and exciting and dangerous and mysterious. It can just even say, like, um, one of my favorite things with ogres. When you say ogre, you think, okay, he's big and he's kind of like, whoa, he's an ogre. I like being like, yeah, they're normal guy. Legs and arms are three times as long as normal. He's spindly, and
yeah.
then you're like, what is this thing? Like, does it have reach? Like, what am I, what's going on? And meanwhile, I'm sitting back here with my CR2 ogre stat block that's completely unmodified, just being like, yeah,
Yeah,
like,
it's fine. This is
yeah, it
fine.
works really, really well. And there's so many great, like, zombies work great as constructs.
Zombies work great as constructs. Yeah. In
Like,
fact, yeah, I think that's one of the things I've noticed a lot about the modules that we do, where we do tweaks. Is like you'll take something and just change its type.
mhm,
Uh, and like, yeah, that's just a really smart, like, because there's so many things that can be inherited in a type
mhm.
that like you just don't get. Doesn't I think one of my favorites, so that you've done, is the electric sheep,
Yeah,
the
thank you.
blue dragon wormling electric sheep.
Yeah,
Because yeah, they're just electric sheep in Android Dreamland,
yeah,
and
yeah.
like
Right.
lightning bolts everywhere. Fantastic.
It's fun too when you're working with the SRD, which I guess people don't have to do anymore? Question mark. But
Nice. I mean, ostensibly,
yeah,
like
there's the common.
so they opened the SRD to the Creative Commons,
Okay,
so now you can use it and reference it using like
a
a
line
two
or two.
sentence blurb.
Is it still the same list of monsters that you're tied to?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that was one of the more, when we were doing like the 2-page dungeons and stuff, having to play off of that list of monsters was like, it's so helpful creatively too, because it's like you have your idea, your options, so to speak, are very, very limited, which makes it,
300 monsters is
well, but
there's
like,
a lot of
it's a lot
monsters.
of monsters, but how many of them are dragons of varying ages and colors, right? Like,
Hey,
uh,
hey, hey. Are you calling
yeah,
Dungeons and Dragons
a
even
little
slightly
repetitive.
unoriginal or
There you
repetitive?
go. Hobbits, halflings.
Short people.
Yeah. Mouse folk. But I feel like there is something really creatively freeing about being like, okay, well, I'm going to have an idea, and then I'm going to look over this list for something that works for that, and I'm just going to try and tweak it a little bit, and
Yeah.
like, I think that's great. If I could uh, save time in a bottle, no. if I could write a letter to the D&D people for the next edition and just say, like, what do you want in the next edition?
I think you can, by
Can
the
I?
way. Yeah, they're
Does
doing
the postal system still works? What year is it? Um,
many years since
many
Germany
years.
won the war.
Yeah. We,
Dystopian future.
yeah, the grasshopper lies heavy. Anyway, sorry, Philip K. Dick nonsense. Um, the monster manual, I feel really, really strongly, should be like, for every CR layer, so like every CR row or whatever you want to call it, there should be like 5 or 6 shells of a monster that are like, this is a heavy hitter monster, this is a caster monster, this is a leader monster, this is a thiefy monster, this is, these are the classes of monster. And then you should have all of the abilities that you can tag onto those monsters, either keeping the CR the same or altering it however.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can have your monster manual and be like, okay, well, goblins are a CR 1/4 rogue monster that has this ability and this ability, and they speak goblin and this and that, and just kind of really give you the toolkit. Yeah. So I don't know if you've seen the rules for finding CRs for homebrew monsters in 5th edition, but they are.
I think there's a joke internally at Wizards of the Coast because they wrote them, but they wrote them for that book.
Yeah.
They didn't use them for
For
the
that book, yeah.
monsters. For the book that is the monster book, they
Yeah.
just wrote them so that they would be like, well, give the DM something
Yeah.
and handed it off. But like they have apparently a spreadsheet
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in a WotC vault that they punch all the things into and it gives them a CR. And Mike Shea is convinced that there's a bug in the spreadsheet. That's what happened. It was like the spreadsheet is ancient. This bug has been there since the beginning.
I believe it.
And so it's just been wrong and nobody has caught it because it's like a programming bug. It's not an
Yeah.
actual, there's no sense to it. No, people have lost the meaning of the
Yeah, the
formula.
guy who wrote the Excel sheet is currently in Tajikistan, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Smoking mind expanding
yeah,
alien pheromones through a laser hookah.
nice.
Um,
Yeah,
shoot.
I mean, there's so many 5th edition monsters that
There's a
are.
book, Forge of Foes.
Mhm.
I think is also Sly Flourish and his buddies, and they did very much that. They basically that whole
The
book
component
is
monster,
about
the modular
how to
monster.
construct monsters,
Hmm.
um, kind of on the fly.
I feel like it's such a better way to do it.
It is. It is. It really is. And I haven't read that book, but I've seen reviews of it, and I've seen kind of the parts of it that he had available for free. Sorry, Mike, I haven't bought all your books yet.
I
Um,
have bought none of them.
and he never will.
I know. I'm
I'll buy them for
Yeah,
him.
I'll read his.
Yeah.
Piracy. That's how we used to do it. Um,
But yeah, no, it's a really solid looking system, and it works in tandem with the lazy DM stuff. So it's like it's really well designed. They did a good job. Great job. Go pick up Mike Shea's Forge of Foes.
we like Mike Shea.
Yeah, Sly Flourish was good.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. He's one of the best mediocre white guys on the internet.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's the
and
union.
has been forever.
I voted for him for union chief. I don't know what we really gotta. Um,
Man, that'd be crazy if there was like a Titter Pig writers union.
oh God. Yeah, honestly, I think it would have to change from one of those things. Right now, it's a little bit. Everybody wants to cook and nobody wants to eat. It's
Yeah, no, that's fair.
that
That's
is the
fair.
problem.
That's interesting. So you feel like the appetite for games is smaller than
The interest in
the interest in making them.
your yeah. Well, I feel like everybody. I feel like there's a lot more people who want to write modules. Like the amount of modules that are written is way beyond what is needed, right? Like it's
Well,
like,
what's needed?
yeah. Well, I mean, really, like I think people when you look at like the modules that people are really excited about, or like that are famous in some way or well known, they're usually coming out of very. Sorry, I'm trying to phrase this in a way that doesn't make me sound like the world's biggest asshole.
You're the world's biggest asshole. Just say it.
Yeah, I am, aren't I? I shit all over this. Um, yeah, I mean, I think like when people like the adventures that make people excited, like Curse of Strahd in Fifth Edition, or like Jacquet's work in the Battle Days, like they're both kind of coming in, for lack of a better word, in impoverished times where there weren't a whole bunch of there wasn't a whole bunch of content for those games at that time. And like Tomb of Horrors is kind of like that. Like when Tomb of Horrors was around, it was like, this is the hard one. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was like, it stood out, it had its own kind of thing. And I think ultimately when people play modules a little bit, they would like the idea that like there's a community of people that you can go to and go, hey, my players did this in the bone mill. How's Strahd going to react? And there's a whole bunch of people who've played it, and they go, "Oh, my players did the same thing. I can tell you all about it. Like, I even wrote a little table for this, and I'll send you. Like they've got a community. They have focus. Whereas you look at 99% of the stuff on drive-through sells less than 100 copies, has probably read by about half of the people who bought it, probably run by about a tenth of those. So if you sell 100 copies, maybe 6 tables ran your games for 4 people each. So
yeah, and it never happens immediately. I think that's the other thing to take into consideration when
yeah,
you're writing these things. It's like you publish it, somebody buys it, they might read it immediately, but when are they going to bring that to the table? It's going to
yeah.
be weeks, months,
You know,
a years. Like,
so Patrick Stewart, Maze of the Blue Medusa.
yeah,
I remember that almost kind of got me back into D&D a little bit. My wife bought me a copy. I was like, this is so beautiful. Like the production value is so nice. Really inspires me. I think about it a lot. Never, I've never run it. You know what I mean? I've never even run the
you
opening
threatened
and
to.
I threatened to on occasion, but
We want to play it.
I'd love to play it.
Well, let's play it.
We should, but also I want to run more Blood Prairie games, and I want to run Bar Hack, and I want to run Pixels and Pagans, and I want to, I want to make a Venture Brothers Fantastic Four pastiche, and there's a million things I want to do, and there's only so many opportunities to get me and my 30 plus friends around a table to, us away from our day jobs and our kids, and like making that time to play that game just is such a rare thing. Am I really going to spend it on something somebody else wrote, or like am I going to buy, like I have so many. Broodmother Sky Fortress I read a couple of weeks ago is amazing.
Yeah.
Like just so, like, it's really really great. Have you read it all?
No.
So there's the opening bit of it is basically just like, hey,
Spoilers
here's
for Broodmother Sky Fortress.
well, no
Maybe
spoilers,
not.
no spoilers for Broodmother Sky Fortress, because it's like, hey, where did the bad guys come from? Here's like 4 options. Maybe they're fallen angels, maybe they're mutants from Mars, maybe they're this, maybe they're that, and it's like it gives you a whole bunch of options as a DM to, twiddle different bits and make it fit your campaign. And then once you actually get into it, the whole thing is like basically 6 or 7 really great unique monsters in a really great unique setting with like lots of good thinky ways to beat monsters that are mechanically hard, but that you as players are kind of using the environment against them, and doing all that kind of the stuff you find on what, like, how should you write your D&D module, like make sure the environment can be used against it's everything is there, it's all done so well. I'm probably never going to get a chance to run it. I think highly of it. It inspires me, but
Well, I think that is, if I can be so bold,
yeah,
that's why we do it.
yeah,
That's what the modules are for.
to
The modules,
inspire.
yeah, like I would say there is a percentage of DMs who run by the book modules, but I would not say that those are the DMs that I write for.
Yeah.
Certainly not the DMs I hope read our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, because they're probably not going to get to our stuff. There's more than enough WotC stuff that they consider canon,
Yeah.
that they care about. They care about the lore of Wizards of the Coast. They care about the lore of Forgotten Realms. That shit's a nightmare. Sorry, Ed. It's great, but holy crap!
I
Like,
love the books. I wouldn't want to play
I
a
wouldn't want to play
D&D
D and
game
D
in
in
the
Forgotten
Forgotten
Realms.
Realms.
That
Yeah.
sounds like a horror show. That does not sound like a fun setting to me.
Well,
But that's because I have opinions on what makes a fun setting, and
yeah,
my opinions tend to be low high magic. Actually, it's funny. What's her name? Kingsmill, Dale Kingsmill said this literally on the Ghostfire podcast, Eldritch Lorecast, the other day, and I was like, God, that's the best way I've ever heard this put. But magic is pervasive; it's everything, but your access to it is limited, or your
interesting.
knowledge that it is magic is limited. So it's kind of how I feel about like the real world. Like cities are kind of like a magic, but your capacity to be in control of the faculties of a city are
Mm-hmm.
limited. It's kind of your willingness to buy into all of the, social stuff, but then you're also kind of being controlled by that magic in the same way. And I just kind of feel like that's kind of how like civilization works. Is it's like a
Yeah,
magic that we share via
you buy into
language, and
the
then
idea buys into you.
yeah, like but you don't actually control it. Like there's some people, there's wizards out there who do control it,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not us. They're like running the Federal Reserve and
Yeah,
shit.
Bernanke the sorcerer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, kind of makes sense. Like, Anyway, not to get into that too much, but like, I feel like that's a really interesting and engaging way to present a world. To be like, yeah, there's magic and it's everywhere, but you wouldn't necessarily know that it was magic unless you really understood it or scratched under the hood and kind
Mm-hmm.
of like had some insight into the inner workings. And then, despite that, your ability to control or influence that magic is highly mitigated by you not being the person in control. And I think that was what you guys experienced up against Aspian,
Mm.
where yeah, his all of his power came from having an undead army, but whatever. Like that's normal D&D
Yeah.
fare. And being a noble,
Yeah.
which he used abusively and regularly against all of you. And that was kind of the magic of him, was that he
Had the connection.
had the he had the patents. This was his land. Like
Yeah.
he was the law, you know. And yeah, I think that makes for such an interesting place to play games and have stories and let the players discover, because at some point understanding the motivations of who controls those levers of power
Mm-hmm.
can kind of become the game.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is where exploration social kind of turns the engine of how to make world changing stories,
Mm-hmm.
which I
Speaking of games I'll never play,
like.
that you bought and I read, Carcosa has.
Did I buy Carcosa for us?
Yeah, you did. I don't think
Is
you
it?
read it. I
Did I
did.
have it physical?
No, I
Oh,
think
it's
it was a
just the.
PDF.
Okay, no, I did. Okay, yeah, I read it. I read it.
You did?
Yeah, I read. I skimmed
Yeah,
it.
I'm not surprised. I think that's it's the kind of book that's best skimmed, really.
I think most D&D books are best skimmed.
Best skimmed.
Yeah.
But the magic system in that, some of the grimdark kind of, silliness notwithstanding, um, is one of the most interesting things about that, because it's like, if you want to cast a spell, it's like go to this place,
Uh-huh.
perform these actions, and you get, this effect in these ways. Like it's very every spell you get is like a secret formula that then sends you out into the world to quest for usually human sacrifices, because again, Carcosa is not something I would
It's a
run.
Lamentations of the Flame Princess thing.
Yeah, it's I think even by the standards of Lamentations, it's a little much for me. um
Like I'm pretty sure James Raggi literally the other day was like, since the Ampersand game is making a planescape or like opening up the plains, what should the Lamentations of the Flame Princess
yeah.
planes be? And he was like, use Carcosa as a good reference point. And I was like, yeah, no, it's even by their standards, they love it.
Oh, I'm sure they do. But there is a lot of great stuff in Carcosa. Like
Of course.
the psionic system is amazing, and I love that magic system where everything you get feels like a little secret that you can weaponize against the world,
It's
or
cool.
And I
Yeah.
really wanted to do that. Like we've been working on a game, Blood Prairie, talking about the magic system for that. I would really like to have the entire magic system for that game be in the GM book.
Yeah.
And as a player, if you get a spell, you get like a card or something.
Right.
And it's only when you know the spell that you get a little bit of information about it. And even then, it might not tell you all the consequences, or it might not tell you how to negotiate with the spirit you're dealing with, or
Right.
but it gives you those little levers, those little dials that you can kind of mess with the world.
Yeah, I think Blood Prairie is the kind of world where it would be best served with like magic as artifact, and then like your exposure to it is like, oh, I've found this artifact. It isn't working now.
I
I
need
need
to.
to go and quest to get it
Mm-hmm.
into a position where it works. Okay, it's working now. Oh shit, turn it off.
Yeah.
Like
Well, that's one of the things I do appreciate about the Lamentations published modules is that oh shit, turn it off moment seems to be at the end of
yeah.
like I just finished reading All Dogs Go to Hell, which is like I'm being flippant, but it's like 6 pages of adventure followed by 12 pages of now you're fucked. It's just like it's really like and here's all the things that could have gone wrong and the campaign defining consequences of each of them.
Yeah. Cool. Anyway, I guess the thing I was saying that I probably never even got out was I buy modules to harvest them
For bits.
for bits of good ideas and
Mm-hmm.
inspiration for good ideas. And so, in my mind, the best thing to write and publish as an adventure module writer is not necessarily, I mean, it is a complete adventure, but it is more so a complete adventure that has so many ideas packed into a very tight amount of words
Mm-hmm.
that you can't read half of it without coming up with 20 cool new ideas that are germinated from the seed of that adventure,
Mm-hmm.
and that you go and rip off and take off into your campaign in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like the whole purpose of the 5e kind of two pagers for us was
Yeah.
like, how can we become super proficient at executing on constraint space layouts? How can we become super proficient at being concise and punchy and evocative with our prose? How can we save a ton of money on art? Because
We only have to
I'll tell
illustrate
you,
one page.
yeah, if you're not using AI art, which it turns out everybody hates you if you use it, so
People with Twitter accounts hate you. I think people who
yeah.
spend money on modules don't care.
Sound off in the comments if you yeah
Yeah.
if you're hearing this and you can't give a shit, and if you want to buy, we have a game that's been ready to go for over almost a year now. Warp Crawl. It's done. It's beautiful.
It's
It's a
fun.
book. It's fun. It's kind of huge, honestly. It's like 65,
Yeah, it ain't
64
small.
pages. It's available. Like we have it ready on paperback. It's been print tested. It's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
But it's filled with AI art. It's gorgeous looking AI art. We couldn't possibly replace the art with it would cost us thousands of dollars to replace the art with human effort.
Tens of
Tens of
thousands.
thousands of dollars. If you guys want it, sound off and comment down below and shut down anybody who says don't use AI art, because we wrote this game. It's awesome, and we play tested the hell out of it. We really put our effort into it, and the layout looks gorgeous. It's so good,
And we just can't
and we
afford.
can't like. I mean, I'll honestly, we'll just have to ship it. We'll just have to ship it. There's nothing else we can kind of do. Like I can't swallow the cost of writing it because I paid the writer, like we did the thing,
Thanks
right?
for
We
that.
yeah, no worries. Like
Yeah. The
uh,
writing's all human.
yeah, the writing's all human. The art was labored over. It's not like it wasn't labored over. It's just
No.
we were punching in, and we punched in and replaced and generated and replaced, and it was a lot all laid out. Oh, it's so good though. Anyway, another great book of inspiration
Yeah.
and fun stuff. Although I think ultimately, the things I love about Quest Crawl, Warp Crawl, Waste Crawl, all the crawls, is the minimalism in design that I don't think I've really seen anywhere else. Like you get a ton out of what you get
Yeah.
in the for the minimalism, for the rules that we've got. There's just so much in that game.
I feel like Quest Crawl works really well because it's geared to be like the meaning of the individual spaces changes dramatically depending on what's around them. Like where you read the rules and you're like, oh, like twos are foraging spots, like, and yeah, they are, but like a two right next to town is very different from a two right next to like an unearthed evil, or a two at the end of a peninsula, or two twos next to each other. Is like, that's a special thing, as we've found in our playing. If you can bounce off two forages, that's a really really nice setup. Things like the game plays very differently depending on where the mountains are, where the dwarves are. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
One of my favorite things to do when we first did that game, and I was working on the Roll20 board for it, was to go and just generate boards and take pictures of them and
Yeah.
post them online and talk about what the story was that the world was telling me
Mm-hmm.
with the layout of the cards. That was just such an interesting. I had never considered that before as like a way to do that, and I'm super interested in what we end up doing with Advanced Quest Crawl or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna vote. I'm definitely gonna vote for Advanced Quest Crawl. I think
I think
that's
that
the
works.
okay, cool.
It puts us further up in the alphabet, if nothing else.
Exactly, and it's the Gygaxian tradition, right? It's like I don't want to pay you royalties for the original
Oh,
Quest
good.
Crawl,
Okay.
so when we do Advanced Quest Crawl, it'll be all
You're
new,
gonna
separate
You're gonna
royalties.
screw me over like Gygax. There we go. Thanks.
No, I would never
No.
do that.
Oh, you're a champ. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we realize we're coming up on the end of our time, but even the longer stuff we did for 5e, I feel like each of those were so like, you know, um, like Doom Desert is awesome. If you want to take it apart, I feel like the bits work great on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Moon Elves, I feel very very proud of Moon Elves, because I feel like it's an attempt to add mechanics to a very underdeveloped part of the game, and I feel like it's not hard to take the party point system in Moon Elves and rearrange it to be a feast in the Hall of the Dwarven King, or it's, you are getting drunk on plum wine in the celestial heavens.
In
And
fact, if I'm not mistaken, in Bitter Feast, you kind of almost give like an homage to the party point system during that whole scenario.
I mean, it's a
It's not really
different.
a point system, but like you kind
Yeah,
of imply that.
it's a similar kind of attempt to gamify those social interactions by
Right.
pairing people up with NPCs and having them go through their own little arcs with these other characters.
That's
Um,
interesting. I wonder. So I think like, why do you feel that that's necessary? Why do you feel that that's necessary,
okay.
or why do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah. So I guess for a couple of reasons. The first one being that I do think there's a lot of credence to when people say like the game is about whatever the mechanics are about. So D&D is about killing things, getting money, and buying better tools to kill more things. Like, that's kind of the loop.
Yeah.
And so I feel like saying, okay, the challenge here is you gotta impress these guys, like,
Mm-hmm.
socially. I feel like finding ways to quantify that, or even just saying like, you got a point, you didn't get a point. Like, it helps people latch onto these things. I remember, was it Dice So Nice They Said Dice Twice that ran Moon Elves in an actual play? Or was it Queer XP? I think it was Dice So Nice They Said Dice Twice. I'm so sorry. You guys are all great. Anybody who's run our games for an actual play, I love you. Please don't hurt me. But
I don't think either of them ran Moon Elves. Somebody else ran Moon Elves, but
well, they were great, whoever they were.
yeah,
I can't remember, but it was interesting watching these guys play it, because I'd never spoken to any of them, and they were total strangers to me, just kind of running it based off the book.
yeah.
And
Was
when they
Dice, I think
got,
you're
yeah, it was Dice. Okay, cool.
right.
It was really interesting watching them start, because the party scene kind of begins, and it's like, okay, now you're, and they were very unsure at first. The players were like, I don't know, like, what can I hit it with my axe? Like,
Yeah,
like, what
yeah.
can I do here? And kind of by the time they got through to the third round of picking things, of picking the events, the encounters they were going to do, everybody was really really engaged. They were like, I'm gonna get these party points. I want to do this one. I want to try the most outrageous one on the table, and I feel like giving people those handholds helps them feel less silly when you say, impress the elf king. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when you throw that to somebody without structure, it's kind of like, well, can I roll a charisma check? Like, you know what I mean?
Right. Right. Well, and I think that was exactly what I was like, okay, he's going to say it at some point,
Yeah.
but basically, like, how do you get somebody from I use persuasion,
Yeah. What
you
do I
know,
have
I
on my
roll
character
my
sheet?
I impress him, you know, how do you get them from that to
I want to take my shirt off and smoke that absurdity.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I blow the rings of absurdity out of my nostrils and rip
Yeah.
off my shirt and pants and
I make a
go
pass at the
running through
hollow
the
orchestra.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Uh how do you get a person from point A to point B?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is you make the trip there fun
Mm-hmm.
by providing them, like you said, the tools,
Yeah.
the mechanics to interact with that gives them the uh not the excuse, but like the reason to do the
Mm-hmm.
go the extra, you know, do the crazier thing.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Or you just want to know too that there's content there. Like you want to know if you take that leap of faith, you're going to land on a random table somewhere, right?
Yeah. Is there that's hard. That's actually one of the things that I've had found extremely challenging is as a DM.
Mm-hmm.
I loved running Moon Elves because Moon Elves kind of gave me everything on the DM side of a social encounter that I find is almost always lacking. What is behind that action? What is behind that thing that they can do? And it's like because you're shepherding the party through a huge list of options,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and you don't even have to give them the options. You can say, "Well, there's these things. What do you do?" You know, but you can explicitly give them the options. At the end of the day, having that on the DM side really frees me up to just have as much fun as I want, you know, role playing within the context. But a lot of modules out there, you know, that you read, like they will put a social situation in front of you, and then just be like, okay, good luck,
Yeah.
you know. And without tools on both sides, it's like kind of sitting there staring at each other, like, okay,
Yeah.
what do we do now?
I mean, it's one of the things too. Like we talk about like the things that we're bad at as DMs, and I feel like playing characters is always one for me where I just like my social anxiety flares up, and I'm just like, I don't know. He says something witty. You know what I
Yeah, no,
mean?
I'm
Like,
shit for dialogue.
yeah,
I cannot come up with good. And I'm terrible at monologues. I'll throw a voice down, but
yeah.
just because I love doing voices.
Uh,
Um, but they're usually pretty horse shit. Like they're not good voices. They're just
they don't
funny.
need to be.
That's the. I think it's the beauty of doing voices
Yeah,
is that the worse they are,
the better
the better
almost.
they are. Like
Yeah,
yeah, not like there's some you can't get too screechy without people being like okay,
calm
but
down.
yeah, and before you're like okay, that's I'm not doing any more of that. But yeah, being an oaf for being a witty or whatever. I think the thing that falls over for me is British accents.
Yeah,
As soon as somebody starts doing British accents, I'm like,
I'll take a British accent over the kind of like the fancy talk North American thing. People, you know what I mean? Where they start talking like this, and it's all
that
just.
sounds like a bad British accent to
Well,
me.
maybe that's what it
I
is,
think that's
but
what the elfin hoity-toity.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I am a fancy rich person, and I don't care who knows it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. That's British.
is it? I don't
Yeah,
know. I
something.
something. I mean,
But I agree. I can't. Yeah, I have a hard time with that.
yeah,
I prefer. I think most of my NPCs are from the South.
like the deep south.
Toothless South is what I call
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
sure.
that's my.
Welcome to Maria.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'll reach back there and give me that axe.
Yeah.
Get this spittoon. Go
Um,
get us some goblins. All right. I think we've run our time.
we
Thank you so
have.
much for hanging out with me, Austin,
Yeah,
and doing
always.
another episode. And to you, listener, thanks for hanging out with us
Yeah.
for another wonderful episode.
One more time.
Yeah, subscribe, like, and comment,
Yeah.
or whatever. You
Share it on your Facebook.
don't let me tell you what to do.
Let
You
me
tell
tell
you
you
what
what
to do.
I'll tell you what to do.
I'll tell you what to do. It's
Share it with your friends and threaten them with violence if they don't watch it.
all pretend podcasts aren't boring.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for doing your laundry while you listen to. Thanks for listening to us while you do your laundry.
And yeah, please, if you do get a chance to, go onto our YouTube channel and find the quest crawl tutorial where you can comment to join our giveaway. We'll be giving away 10 copies of the Quest Crawl print zine, which is exclusive. It's only available through us. And I think Cloud Composed Dream Games also has copies of it, but very rare, super hard to find. Fun game. Do that, and otherwise, I think you should stay weird.
Stay weird.